Thanks, Michael. I'm just going to go ahead to our pictures. My name is Natalie DeSandro. I am a senior studying social work.
Hey everyone, I guess I'll go next. I am Kate Isidro. My major is political science and my minor is criminal justice, and I'm a junior.
Hey everyone, Nitan Shanis. I am a senior and I study psychology, economics, and urban studies.
Hello everybody, my name is Shanila and I'm a junior studying urban studies. So the objective of this workshop will be to define collective impact, placing special emphasis on the difference between collective impact and collaboration, discuss how collective impact is conducive to widespread social change, connect collective impact to the practice of leadership, and lastly, practice our knowledge in an interactive activity. So wicked problems or adaptive problems have these things in common. So there are no quick fixes. They are complex and multifaceted. They have conventional methods such as legislation and regulation, but can't and don't work to fix them. And definitions of problems and proposed solutions inform each other. And each wicked problem is essentially novel and unique. Can anyone give any examples of wicked problems?
You can feel free to write them in the chat as well. One that I can think of to maybe get the ball rolling would be something like homelessness. Yes, wicked problems are a type of problem, and they're these like big problems that, you know, can't just be fixed with like one person can't just come in and say, I'm going to fix this problem and then fix the problem, right? So homelessness would be an example of a wicked problem. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Yeah. Prejudice, discrimination.
We have equal education, definitely things like poverty, pollution.
World hunger is a great one, yeah.
World hunger, definitely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Jenna said drug use, definitely.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, so all of these are great examples of wicked problems. Again, as kind of what we were discussing in this slide and in this presentation, wicked problems are, issues that are not easily solvable, right? It might take a collaboration of many people to address them. And even then, it's not necessarily that easy to solve it, but you can work together towards solving that particular issue. And there are many reasons why something is a wicked problem, whether it's, a lot of people are facing it all at once. It's something that's costly to do. It's something that's so ingrained in our society. So people are talking about discrimination and prejudice. So there are many different reasons why, but those are all really strong examples of wicked problems. So before we switch over to the next slide, the purpose of today's conversation is about collective impact. And so we're all in college, we've all heard of the words collective and we've all heard of the word impact, perhaps not together. Before we go on to the next slide and kind of show you what our research definition is, I'm curious, and you can feel free to unmute or just write it in the chat, whatever you feel more comfortable, if you could define what collective impact means to you. And I'll give you guys like a minute or two to think, and then feel free to share in the chat or unmute. So while you guys are thinking about my question, I'll just respond to Samuel's question. Not all problems are wicked problems. You know, doing well on my exam or doing poorly on my exam is a problem that can really only be solved by me, or maybe my tutor and myself, or my professor and myself, but not a whole group of people that really need to work on it in order to solve it. All right, let's see what other folks are saying about collective impact. So we have the impact of collaborative, diverse groups of people coming together to create change. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Fair enough, Alexa. Standardized testing is certainly something that I would consider, especially as a student, as a wicked problem, more wicked than anything else. But anyway, if we could go on to the next slide. And thank you all for participating. We'll be doing that all throughout today's presentation. So the definition that we have here for you today about collective impact is the commitment of a group of important actors from different sectors to a common agenda for solving a specific social problem. So we had some definitions that were close to it, right? And I'll unpack a few of those words there. Obviously, collective means you're working with more than one individual, so it's a group. Those individuals are important to the cause, whether it is because they bring subject matter expertise, whether it is because they have the power to make a difference. They have a common agenda, they're working towards the same goal, because if you have people with conflicting goals, you can't work towards that impact. And we'll unpack that a little bit further in the rest of this presentation. And they're trying to solve a social problem. Again, not my test per se, but some of those other major problems that we said in the chat. Now, you might be thinking, is there really a difference between collective impact and collaboration? Yes. And so these items here that are written below these two words really fall under collective impact, not so much collaboration. And so just to quickly talk about that a little bit further, centralized infrastructure, I have that written here in my notes. I want to make sure I tell you the right thing. That means that all the information is coming from one place and that's being distributed to others involved in the initiative. So again, collaboration, you might be working on a project together, but it's not quite centralized like that and shared equally among everyone else. As far as dedicated staff, so in the example of collaboration, it could be, let me give you another school example. So you're working on a project together, you're collaborating on it, but one person is really doing a lot of work, or perhaps no one is doing a lot of work. You're still collaborating, but you're not really doing collective impact, right? Collective impact only takes place when people are dedicated to that mission and to that goal. And then finally, with regards to structured processes that lead to common agenda, again, we'll be unpacking the common agenda theme a little bit more in this presentation, but it is really important to note that, again, you need to have the same goal and work towards the same vision in order to actually see through to the impact. That doesn't mean that there isn't disagreement. Disagreement is a positive thing that leads to better outcomes, but at the end of the day, you do come to a consensus as opposed to coming from different angles. And so in the case of collaboration, you could do that, but you could still be in disagreement and just have a discombobulated project with a bunch of different items that are not necessarily in congruence. And so if you could switch to the next slide. Oh, and I should note about the previous slide, staff or champions, quote unquote, it doesn't just need to relate to your job world, it could relate anywhere when it comes to collective impact. So do keep that in mind. All right, so how do we achieve this greater social change? How do we address some of these wicked problems that we're discussing earlier? Well, here are a couple of items. I'm sure more can be added, but let's start with the cross-sector coordination, right? So that's like a combination of maybe businesses, nonprofit organizations, people with lived experiences, government officials. All of them bring a different background. They bring a different skill set, a different ability to help the group collectively do more good, right? If you're just having the same kind of person there, they're going to be in congruence, but they're not actually addressing that wicked problem. You need to come from different angles, different levels of influence, and different levels of knowledge and expertise in order to work towards that common good. And quite frankly, these wicked problems are so huge that they need to be tackled in a cross-sector sort of way. Common agenda, I've been mentioning this several times, so let me unpack it a little bit further. Again, so in order to really, let's focus on addressing homelessness, right? Because that's something that I'm passionate about. Well, if half of the group, believe that we should end homelessness by housing individuals, while the other half of the group believes, you know what, we should end homelessness by just ignoring the problem, or quote unquote, sending the homeless individuals to another city, right? Well, you're not really achieving any sort of meaningful social change. I could sit here all day and argue that the first solution is much better than the second solution, but the point is, this group here is not in congruence. They're not working the same agenda. One of them is actually trying to solve homelessness. Another one is just trying to ignore. And so really, to address these wicked problems, you need to address them the right way, but you need to work collaboratively and collectively. In terms of isolated impact, again, that's another one that I'll have to just briefly look through my notes. So I'm going to skip that one and then go to the last one and go back to isolated impact while I look through my notes. Apologies about that. You can tell I'm not practiced. So as far as solving adaptive problems is just another definition for the wicked problems that we work together, that we defined earlier. And so again, in achieving widespread social change, a lot of us want to end homelessness, want to end world hunger, want to end discrimination, whatever it is that you're passionate about. You should really do that through a collective impact lens, because you could do a lot more good collectively. Isolated impact, I just remember what that was. So a lot of times when it comes to, let's say, the field of homelessness, but this really goes to multiple fields. You'll have nonprofits that are, trying out a solution. It works in their area, and they're just waiting for that next organization that's much larger to take that idea and replicate it. Great, but not so great at the same time, right? Because that nonprofit should actually be working with that larger organization, as well as legislators, as well as business folk, as well as other nonprofits, as well as people with lived experiences, because that's the real way to see the social change that you want. You can't wait for the next organization to take it over. You need to work collaboratively and collectively to really see the change that you want to see, and to be able to address the wicked problems.
So we talked about, organizing and, wanting to make this impact on social change, right? So we have 5 different conditions of collective success, right? So what will get you there? We have a common agenda, which Nitan touched on a little bit. We all have a problem, right? And we all, in a way, want to come together and find the solution to this problem. But of course, it's very difficult knowing that one person might want to do it one way, and then another person might want to do it a different way. So we all, either way, want to solve one problem, and we have a shared vision for change, right? That includes a common understanding of the problem and a joint approach, everyone working together collectively, like we've mentioned, to solving it through agreed upon actions. We all want to take the same amount of actions, the same types of actions, and work those into making the social impact. So then we can also engage with people like funders or, organizations and things like that, that can play a very important role when getting organizations to act, and to act together and collectively on top of that. We mentioned shared measurement systems. This is a way in which success will be measured. We have, depending on homelessness or different types of criminal justice reform, different types of topics we all might want to solve. We can definitely measure, but it all depends, right, on what we're trying to solve. And then we have mutually reinforcing activities. we have a lot of different people wanting to solve the same problem. Now, how can we all work collectively? We can all do so by everyone not having to do the same exact thing, but everyone working and doing what they're good at. By this, I mean that, but rather encouraging, we would rather encourage, I'm sorry, each participant to do the activities that they specifically excel at. And these activities should support and be coordinated with the actions of other participants. And this is how we'll be working collectively. Everyone puts in the work that they're really good at. And, you know, one, for example, could be criminal justice reform. Another person can be doing certain types of paperwork while another person does phone calls on that issue, and more, you know, homelessness as well. There's different types of way anyone could go about it. And by using the activities or implementing certain, I would say, I don't know, just impacting in the way that you excel at. And then, so we have continuous communication. We want to all, even if we're all working on different types of activities for this to find the same solution, or to solve the large problem, we all want to communicate with each other. It takes time to build trust among different organizations, or different people, different individuals that maybe, you know, you don't necessarily trust in the beginning because you don't know how it will go, but that's how you build trust, by constantly communicating. Everyone or organizations that you may work with need to see that their interests are being treated fairly, that the objective evidence will be used in the decision-making processes, and that decisions that are made are the best solution to the problem. So everyone's voices are to be heard, should be heard, so that everyone can engage and, of course, come to the problem and solve it collectively. For the fifth one, we have backbone support organizations. And by this, we mean separate organizations, separate staff, all create for the purpose, right, of serving as a backbone for the initiative. That's, again, working together and really being a support system, supporting infrastructure, and definitely coming collectively to solve this large issue. So then we want to connect it leadership. Sorry. So leadership means relationships, right? We all know that when we all want to solve these large problems, discrimination, homelessness, world hunger, we all start by networking, by talking to different organizations and different individuals, and using everyone's strengths to make a difference and make that impact. So relational leadership, it really focuses heavily on relationships and stresses that leadership happens among people engaged in change. Leadership, of course, is develop. It doesn't come with everyone. Everyone works together to see the leadership skills that they can enforce. And then we talk about connecting to the 5 conditions. Well, I want to mention again that collective impact takes this step further by engaging people across sectors to engage in that common change, again, working collectively. And then now move on to connecting to the 5 conditions. Leadership skills are a prerequisite to practicing the previously discussed conditions. So all of those being common agenda and shared measurement systems, mutually reinforcing activities, continuous communication, and backbone support organizations. Connecting to these things, leadership skills are important. And then, of course, linking organizations and individuals together to come to this collective impact, and showing the different types and discussing the different types of ways we can solve the large problem means being, of course, a leader and developing those skills along the way.
Cool. So now that we went through a ton of information about collective impact and organizing for collective impact, let's put these ideas into practice. So let's organize. So in order to emulate what organizing looks like, we're going to be working together to create a collective impact scenario. I'm assuming that we all have different opinions and backgrounds, so this activity will help us come together and make progress on wicked problems. So let's just say that a collective impact consulting firm exists, which it may, I'm not sure, but let's say that it does and that we're in charge of it. It's our job to hypothesize and distribute collective impact action plans to our community. So like the Rutgers-Camden community will kind of keep it local for the purpose of our discussion today. So using the 5 conditions that we discussed and our definitions of collective impact versus collaboration and wicked problems. So basically everything that we talked about so far today, I want to bring it all together and kind of have a discussion about how we would move through the organizing and the collective impact process, right? Like hypothetically and in a much shorter period of time than it would take in real life. But first we have to figure out what wicked problem we're going to tackle in our discussion today. So if we don't necessarily have to keep it to the Rutgers-Camden community, I would be happy to discuss something larger too, but we can kind of look through what some people had suggested earlier for wicked problems, or if anybody has anything that they particularly are interested in talking through and using this model for, I would be happy to hear it so we can start our discussion.
I think it would be interesting if we do something relevant to finals or standardized tests. I think a lot of us could relate.
So what in particular are you thinking? Like, what would be the title of this wicked problem that we're going to try to tackle today, Natan?
I guess stress anxiety, I would say, for finals.
Like the pressure that's put on us as students around this time on our campus. I feel like that is pretty fair. I don't know about you guys, but I'm feeling the pressure and I feel like it's a bit of a problem, not just for me, but if we can all kind of like agree that that's something that is problematic on our campus, I think that would be good. Is there anyone that is just like vehemently opposed because they're so relaxed and they don't think this is a problem? I know Alexa said she digs it.
Well, and I think what makes it interesting as a wicked problem is like that stress can be defined a number of ways and come from a number of sources, right? And so you could be stressed because you're taking some really rigorous courses and you know the final exams are cumulative, right? But at the same time, a person could be experiencing that stress because they decided to, I don't know, play Call of Duty for the first 15 weeks of the semester and are at the point where they're realizing they need to get ready for, exams and final assignments that they haven't been preparing for. Could be work or family pressures. It could be a lack of sleep, right? It could be COVID stress, right? So, how you define stress in that context really makes a difference for thinking about how you might want to solve it. And I think that's really critical for understanding what makes a wicked problem. There's a whole bunch of different ways that you could conceptualize or look at it. And it's more complex than any one of those perspectives.
No, I agree. And that makes sense. So I think taking what Michael just said into consideration, we could spend some time right now really coming to a consensus or just collaborating on what we think would be the best way to define this wicked problem that we're talking about. So are we coming at it from the perspective of the teachers are putting too much pressure on us? Like, is it like a work-life school balance that is causing this wicked problem for us? What do you guys think?
I wanted to say, I think we can kind of attack it from the viewpoint of like really questioning how much finals actually benefit us. And like what does it say about how effectively we learn? Like Michael was saying, that there's all sorts of different reasons why people don't like finals or can't do good on finals. But like, say you have someone who wasn't doing anything the entire semester, wasn't really participating in class or doing the assignments, nothing about doing the finals is going to change that. Like, they're probably not going to do like a whole 180 and just suddenly do well in the finals. They're going to be just as bad. But someone who does really well, I feel like they've already kind of proven themselves. And then finals do typically have like a lot of distress and anxiety around them. And it feels like we've gone through all this work the entire semester, and now we're in this finals week, and it puts a lot of pressure on us, and it really doesn't feel worth it. Because like, I definitely feel like I've already proven my worth in all of my courses, and now I have to go through this undue stress. So I feel like it'll be important to address like, how do finals actually benefit students?
Yes, definitely. So I think what I want to do is get a few answers from everybody, and I'm going to try to like pull out kind of like the theme or the main point of what you're saying, and then when we can like gather a few different answers about how we want to go about attacking this problem, I can try to like bring everybody's points and themes together into like one definition of this wicked problem. So with that being said, Alexa is bringing up it's just kind of like questioning like, what do these finals really show about us as students, right? If you've done great throughout the whole semester, a final's not really going to, like you've already proved yourself to your professors. So you're kind of questioning, who's benefiting from finals? Because it's not, most likely not us, depending on the length of the finals. It like super like you're cramming for 2 days before the final, and then all that information is just going to go right out your head again after you take the final. So I guess your main theme or your main point that you want to try to attack this problem at is just questioning why are we having these? Like, are finals necessary for all courses, only some courses? So that's what I'm getting from Alexa's response. Where is there other kind of thoughts or angles that other people would want to tackle this wicked problem from?
Yeah, I have one. I know for me at least, mine's more on the timing and stress part. And it was kind of annoying just to get 5 exams all at once. I think it'd be a lot less stressful if they were giving out more space. Like, it wouldn't feel like a finals. It would feel a lot better if we just had one exam and then another exam next week. It wouldn't have the same feeling to it.
Right. So definitely, you're like talking about like the pressure of like finals, like this is it, this is your final, so you better do good because
just having everything at once instead of it spaced out.
Yeah. Okay. So you're talking about like the spacing of the finals, like how, because I know in some classes, your finals, like that's the only thing. Like if you don't have any other exams or quizzes, you have a final and that's it, right? So, okay, so you're referring to the pressure and the fact that everything is happening at once. Definitely feel that. Okay, I have some answers in the chat. So Jenna said, I feel that a lot of the pressure does come from the teachers. They create this whole buildup about how much it will affect our grades, and it doesn't really feel like it is helping me learn as a student. Okay, so I'm seeing a little bit of a common theme developing already, especially between this answer and Alexa's answer. So, and Emmanuel's too. So Jenna kind of is touching on both points here, that like, you're not really sure how much you're learning or how much the final is helping you and benefiting you, and that you're feeling a lot of pressure from the teachers because it's this big buildup of like, well, this is it, so you better do well because this is the end. 1 second. Natan, do you mind reading Gabrielle's response real quick?
Not a problem. So Gabrielle's response says, I agree, like a final project or test will be 30 to 50% of our overall grade, and the work we spend the most time on is most indicative of our effort throughout the semester. It's worth a small portion of our grade, which I so second that. I'm sure that others do, but I'd love to hear additional thoughts. I do know that, when it comes to our classes, a lot of times that it really depends on the major and stuff, but for quite a few classes, they do it like that, where so much is reliant on the test. And as we've all kind of been saying, some folks are better at taking tests than others, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't, that they won't succeed in this career. And so before we turn it back over to Natalie, I'm curious if there are others that agree with this statement, and feel free to do a thumbs up, a yes in the chat, unmute yourself and share whatever you feel comfortable.
Yeah, I feel like we all feel this pressure, right, at the end of every semester, where we're thinking, what's all this work I've done, all this every day, there's a journal due or something, every single class that, reflects a small percentage of a grade. And then later we get hit with the final and you don't really know what happened or, what you really discussed about a week into the semester or 2 weeks into the semester. And then you have this really large pressure on your shoulders about taking not only one final exam, but multiples for a lot of classes. So I feel like we can all definitely agree on that.
Absolutely. And I'll add one more thing before I turn it back over to Natalie. In the Institute for Leadership in Action, there were earlier in the year a number of students that were arguing about a different topic with relations to pass no credit. And Michael, who, as you know, advises, the Institute for Leadership in Action and the student leaders cohort, which includes us, was encouraging us not to just, share what our concerns are, but then actually work collaboratively towards, finding solutions. So perhaps we could turn this conversation to that next stage, Natalie.
Yeah, so I think gathering from the responses that we've gotten, and thank you guys so much for contributing, I feel like the main themes that are coming up to kind of like define how we want to go about attacking this wicked problem are questioning how much are we really benefiting from finals, questioning the timing of finals amidst everything else that's happening at the end of the semester, and questioning what the finals are worth in like terms of our entire grade for the semester. So I feel like those are the three themes that have come up throughout this conversation. So now that we kind of have identified the big things about the problem that we want to attack, we can start talking about what groups and organizations needs to form a relationship to begin the organizing process. So I guess a question like this, you would wonder about Rutgers organizations and groups that you could get in touch with to try to start organizing to create collective impact about this wicked problem. So what do you guys think in terms of our campus? Who should get in contact? Who should we, as this consulting firm that we are, who should we contact about this problem? Not like one person, like a name, but just kind of like a group or an organization.
I would say definitely a good contact to have based on my own experiences, definitely the SGA, because they have a lot of different connections that way too, like higher up, like if you get connected to them, because that's what we did with the Pass No Credit option. The Online Learning Student Experience Committee was started, and I was able to kind of help reinstall the Pass No Credit option during the spring semester. So I feel like SGA would be, like the Student Governing Association, for anyone who doesn't know what SGA stands for, would be a really good connection to make, because then they could help us go higher up.
Right. So we, as students trying to solve this wicked problem, the Student Government Association would probably be first on the list to try to get in contact with, because then through a conversation with them, through bringing this problem that we just spent time discussing, by bringing it to their attention, they have the connections, like you said, Alexa, to bring it even higher. Whereas we, just as students ourselves, if we went straight up, it might not have as much of an impact as if we have the SGA on our side, also rallying around this same issue. So who else do you guys think would be good to try to get in touch with about this problem, solving this problem?
I guess your academic advisor, they can always give you advice or tell you where to go.
Yeah, like your academic advisor is supposed to be someone you, not like, have a close relationship with, but just like you're supposed to feel comfortable talking to them about stuff like this. So if you're really feeling the pressure, and if you've talked with other students like us and other students are also feeling the pressure, you could even go to them, you could even gather other people that have the same academic advisor as you. Once again, you're reaching out to other people, which is going to create more of an impact because you have different opinions and different, like we all kind of had, like I said, there are common themes, but everybody brought a little bit something different to the table when defining the problem. So when you go to an academic advisor or to the SGA, having a group with all these different perspectives on the problem is going to be good. So I think an academic advisor is also a good person to connect with about this problem. Thank you. Does anyone else have any ideas for anybody to form a relationship with? Okay, in that case, we can move on to our last little, or Natan, you can say.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was also thinking groups like the Student Nursing Association. I think there's also accounting students group, a number of student groups that focus on specific majors because they can bring their own perspectives and ideas and concerns and connections with respect to those particular paths.
Yeah, that's a good idea because a lot of majors and areas of interest do have associations or clubs, tied to them. So that right there, if you're a nursing major and you get the Student Nurses Association to hear about this problem and they agree and they also think it's a wicked problem, now you have this entire organization, once again, on your side about this problem. And that's like, I really like the fact that you brought up that it's like connected to majors, because if you can get like a majority of these clubs involved, then it's like you have the entire school involved, because there's a lot of people in the Student Nurses Association and all those different types of clubs. So that was a good example. Thanks.
And not to mention, like Alexis, I'm sorry, not Alexis, Alexa said was the SGA being able to reach someone higher up, right? So in even your academic advisor or, anyone you're able to speak to can definitely reach that person, that dean, or, like every department has a certain, I don't know what you would call it, a dean, or, just that person that's in charge of either the nursing or the political science, or even, how we have different buildings, social sciences versus, just physical science or whatever it may be. Either way, everyone working collectively like this and coming together and discussing that problem will be able to reach the top person that will be able to make the change for you.
Yeah, definitely. And as you were talking, Kate, I was listening to you, of course, but then I was thinking through what we talked about earlier in terms of like the rejection of just like an isolated impact. So what keeps coming up when we talk about how to form these relationships and who to form them with is that you have people behind you, right? So it's not just you. So I'm thinking like, let's say in my class, I thought my final was worth too much of the grade. And I personally like just talked to my professor about it and got it changed just for me or something. Let's just be hypothetical. So that's great. Like I solved it for myself, but what about everybody else is also having this problem? And there are so many of us. So I feel like the amount of impact that can be achieved by bringing in different people and different organizations is not insurmountable. It can't be compared to what I could just do on my own, right? It's going to be exponentially more. So I'm thinking moving from here, we want to agree on our common agenda for solving this wicked problem. So now we defined the problem. We know who we're going to try to get in contact with and how to get in contact with them. So now we've formed relationships with the SGA, the Student Nurses Association. We talked to our academic advisor. So now that we're all on board with this and we're all like, yeah, let's do it, what will be our common agenda that we're going to want to bring to the table? How do we start a conversation? Now that we all, agree about the problem, now we have to have an agenda. So what do you guys think would be kind of like the first step in that agenda? So for example, I'm thinking a first step, because this type of change has to come from more like higher up or like administrative level. Well, whatever. So first, I guess, even before we talk about the type of change, what exactly do we want to change? Do we want finals to be worth less? Do we want do we want it to be more like spread out throughout the year rather than like one big final? So I guess the first thing would be to say, like, what exactly do we want to accomplish with this collective impact initiative?
Right, so we make this decision, right, that we all agree upon together. And then we all agree on the next course of action, which Gabrielle did a good job in mentioning in the chat, maybe a school-wide survey on finals to show administration how not only our collective group feels, but how the whole entire school might feel.
Right, and a survey like that would probably give us a good indication, like, okay, so what, like I was just saying, what exactly do we want to tackle about this problem? And if we had a survey that said 75% of the campus thinks that finals should be worth 20% instead of 50%, then that'd be a pretty good piece of evidence to kind of get the ball rolling. Does anyone else have any ideas about how to kind of gather that information and start the agenda?
I forgot the name of their office now, but we have something like an instructional design office on campus, and they do a lot of research on all sorts of best practices and best methods. So seeking their support and input in coming up with some of our answers would be really beneficial.
Yeah, definitely. I did not know that office existed. So that would be a good one to get in touch with about this problem. Are there any other ideas about this before I move to the last part of our exercise?
The only other idea that I would bring up, sorry for jumping in twice here, is a lot of times when it comes to, well, any decisions in the classroom, it falls on faculty, and faculty have a lot of autonomy, right? So we would need to find, I don't know what this looks like, but influential faculty that can convince other faculty that this is a good idea, right? And whether, that is looking for, faculty that serve on the university senate, to pitch some of these ideas, whether it is the chairs of particular departments that are, of course, faculty. I'm not sure, I don't have the answer, but that's something that we'd want to keep in mind as well in this effort.
Yeah. Who are the stakeholders that we can get in touch with to kind of be leaders in this initiative? Definitely. Re-examine and go over the exam conflict rules is what Emmanuel said. So can you elaborate on that?
Oh, I'll just say go over that because I think sometimes we forget when you fight for calls what the actual rules are. So I guess, so do you go over the group, like, these are the rules? How do we want to change these in particular that already exist?
Right. Like, that's actually a really good point, because what if we like get all these groups together and everyone's like, yeah, we have to change this. And then we go and we're like, okay, let's actually like read some policy. And the policy says like, okay, it only has to be worth like 20%, let's say. And then that would mean that it's up to the individual professors who are making it, higher, like 50 or 60% of your grade. So then that would be a more of a like, okay, let's like talk to these professors individually, and it would be less of like an administrative thing at that point. So that was a very good point, I have to say. Thank you. Okay, so for the last little bit of this exercise, I want to just ask how we can keep the 5 conditions of collective success in mind during this collective impact process. So I'm just going to go back to that slide because I don't have them memorized. So these are the 5 conditions that we talked about earlier. So I think the main one in this case that might be like very important is the continuous communication. I mean, they're all important, of course, but in this case, I really see that like being very pertinent. So how do you guys think we could make sure that we're having that kind of continuous communication between these groups and organizations that may not have had any communication before? How do we like keep it going and keep everybody on the same page? Anyone have any ideas?
Social media, keeping it up to date.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, like everything has like an Instagram page, right? So kind of like putting stuff on the story or posting stuff so that everybody is like in the know about what's going on. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, we always like to have platforms like Slack, Discord, GroupMe, but more like Slack, like professional platforms like that for everyone to stay in communication. And like if we're working with multiple different organizations, try to have like representatives from each one to keep everyone else in the loop type thing. I think that would
Right.
be beneficial.
Like a report back method, like
Mhm.
to the rest of the organization. Yeah, I think like establishing like, okay, this is how we're going to communicate, like whether it be Slack, Teams, or whatever it may be, having that be established and everyone is aware. I think that's very important too. And that they use it and check it, you know. How about in terms of the common agenda? How do we kind of, I guess common agenda and continuous communication go hand in hand in this one, but like, how do we make sure through our communication that we're staying on track with the common agenda that we put in place in the previous question? Like, what if, I don't know, we just want to make sure that everyone is on the same page. So would that be, like, how often do you guys think like a meeting would be good? Like weekly, bi-weekly, to make sure that everyone's making progress on the goal that we have set in place? But yeah, so does anyone else want to add anything about how to make sure that we're making, like going through these 5 conditions before we move on? Okay, cool. So thank you guys for participating in our experiential component. Now we have a few discussion questions, but I'm aware of the time. It's already 5:52. So we can just go through the first few or however many we get through. But I want to ask you guys why it's important that we work collaboratively toward a goal instead of singularly toward your own goal. So we kind of touched on this a few times, but I guess I just want to really ask you guys, why is this so important?
You have more power when you're with people than by yourself.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to a lot, is like the power that you have, and because the power also comes from so many different backgrounds and opinions, and like everyone's bringing different things to the table. So that's power, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think we did that like diversity, equity, and inclusion type workshop. So I feel like singularly, you might not always have everyone's best interest in mind, but when you work collaboratively, you get to take in different perspectives and recognize how different people are impacted in different ways. Like, I don't like standardized testing because I may be neurotypical, but I recognize how it's unfair to disabled people, to neurodivergent people. I recognize how it's classist. Like, we want to include those people in these conversations. So yeah, I think that's really important. That's why collaboration is really important.
Yeah, and I like that you're recognizing, even if I am not being super like it's not affecting me so much. I can see how it's affecting people around me, and that's not okay with me, right? So kind of like talking to other people, because you may never have known of that perspective if you didn't kind of ask or, been open to conversation about these different things. And that's kind of how we learn about different perspectives. And then we get fired up and want to do a collective impact type of initiative. So Ariana said your impact is larger if you work toward a goal that affects everyone instead of just yourself. Definitely. Kind of like, I really like that actually. Kind of like Natan said in the beginning, like if he wants to ask his professor, or if he doesn't do good on a test, right? It's not good, but it's not a wicked problem because it's just affecting him. But if, for example, in this finals wicked problem that we discussed, that's affecting everyone. So the impact is going to be campus wide rather than just one student. So definitely. Cassius said the strength of the wolf is the pack. The strength of the pack is the wolf. Hold on, I have to read that again. The strength of the wolf is the pack. Strength of the pack is the wolf. Cassius, you might have to explain that one to me. That might be going over my head.
It pretty much means that a wolf by itself is a fierce creature, but ultimately a wolf cannot thrive by itself because of the food that a wolf hunts. A wolf hunts food that's much larger than itself. So it needs other wolves working collaboratively in order to achieve the goal of to survive. So the strength of the wolf comes from its interactions with others.
Right. Yes, I like that analogy, even though I didn't understand it on the first read. Now that you explain it, I get it, and it's definitely true. It kind of encompasses everything that we were discussing today. So yeah, thank you for that little quote. Did anybody else want to answer why it's important to work collaboratively?
I'll jump in quickly, and I can't say it quite as nicely as Cassius just said it, but I think another factor to add on to what everyone already said is that if we're trying to solve all these wicked problems, then you singularly are passionate about it. Well, you only have 24 hours in a day and 7 days in a week. You're limited in what you could do, and hopefully you spend 8 hours of those 24 sleeping, right? And so you need other people joining in the effort to really be able to address, these massive problems for the reasons that Alexa mentioned, for the reasons that Kate mentioned, and others, but also for this reason of just limited resources, limited time.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you're only one person. So what you can accomplish by yourself, not that it's not impressive and great and expansive, but just imagine even just doubling that effort. What about tripling or quadrupling? Or I don't know what comes after quadrupling, but you can just see how it just like expands and the impact is greater, and you're making connections with different people, which is helping your leadership skills, and it all just comes together so nicely. So yes, it's important to share responsibility with others when working toward a goal. Yeah. Also just to reduce burnout within yourself, because especially a lot of these things are things that we're very passionate about and we're going to want to work on them day and night, but it's just not realistic. In the end, it hurts you and it hurts the work that you're trying to do because of burnout.
I know, Natalie, we're almost ready to wrap up. I'll just say one more thing to add on to here. I'm sorry I talked so much. The person with the most power in the US is the president, right? But if they write an executive order, that executive order doesn't mean anything until someone else actually uses it and does something about it, right? Or a group of individuals. The president is so powerful because folks listen to him or her or them. They have thousands of employees that listen to them, right? And so that's something else to keep in mind in terms of collective impact. Even the most powerful of individuals only have their power from the fact that there is a collective of individuals that are working together towards those same goals.
Another good analogy. Thanks, Natan. So yeah, as Natan said, it is 5:59. So sadly, I don't think we have time for our our other discussion questions, but these, oh, does anyone have any questions for me or us? Cool. So in that case, these are the resources that we used to create this presentation. And I want to say thank you guys for coming out and listening to our presentation and participating in our discussion and experiential component. I appreciate it and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. And please feel
Bye-bye.
free to stay on if you have any more questions.
Thanks so much for the wonderful workshop.